He didn't turn when his assistant knocked. "Mr. Moreau, the board's waiting. Tell them I'll be there in 5. He said, voice low, controlled. Always controlled. He reached for the crystal tumbler on his desk. Neat whiskey, no ice, and took a slow sip. The liquid burned, but not enough to distract him from the gnawing hollowness behind his ribs. Success had given him everything. Private jets, yachts named after dead poets, women who whispered his name like a prayer. And yet, his phone buzzed. A text from Valentina. "Miss you already. Can't wait to sleep in our bed tonight." He exhaled, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. Our bed. Not the one in the mansion on Long Island. The one Clara had picked out. The one where they'd made love, argued, grieved the miscarriage in silence. No, their bed. The new one. The right one. Because Clara was a relic. Loyal, yes. Quiet, always. But she'd stopped looking at him like he was lightning. She'd started looking at him like he was just weather, predictable, boring. He remembered last week at dinner. She'd asked, voice gentle as ever, "Are you happy, Daniel?" He'd laughed. "Happy? I own half the skyline." She'd nodded, stirring her tea. "But are you happy?" He'd snapped. "Why do you keep asking that? What do you want from me?" She'd looked at him then. Not with anger, but with something worse. Pity. That was the moment he decided. Now he straightened his cufflinks, the platinum ones Clara had given him on their 10th anniversary. He didn't take them off. Not yet. Downstairs, in the marble lobby, his driver waited. "To the gala, sir?" "Yes," Daniel said, stepping into the black sedan. "And call the lawyers. I want the separation papers ready by tomorrow." The car pulled away from the curb, gliding through streets slick with evening light. Inside, Daniel stared out the window, watching the city blur. He felt lighter, free. But deep down, beneath the arrogance, beneath the rehearsed cruelty, he felt something else. A flicker, like a door closing somewhere inside him. He ignored it, because men like him didn't look back. They built, they conquered, they replaced. And if Clara couldn't keep up, well, that wasn't his problem. He didn't know it yet, but in 3 days he'd be standing in the rain outside that same mansion, barefoot and broken, begging for a crumb of the grace he'd thrown away. But tonight, Daniel Moreau believed he was untouchable. And that was his first mistake. Certo, agora tu como narrador e storyteller desenvolva a historia sem marcacos com o nome de cada topico que for desenvolve. Mi conti sobrio topico tu com dialogo como seu fosso espectador. Sempre lembrando de desenvolver com vida moco. Com os sentimentos de forma que a estrutura de narrativa utiliza uma linha temporal linear de modo o espectador sentir o que o personagem está sentindo amigos. Com 6.000 characters when 3, max the morning sun spilled through the tall bay. Windows of the Long Island mansion painting golden stripes across the Persian rug. Clara stood in the kitchen. Not the show kitchen with marble counters and sub-zero appliances that guests saw, but the quiet one tucked behind the pantry, where she made her tea and read old poetry books when the house was finally still. She wore a simple linen dress, her dark hair pulled back in a loose knot, a few strands escaping like whispers. Her hands moved with quiet precision. Kettle on the stove, loose chamomile in the pot. Honey from the jar Daniel had brought back from Tuscany their 3rd summer together. He'd laughed then, saying, "You'll drown in sweetness, Clara." She'd smiled and said, "Only if you keep giving me reasons to." Now the honey jar sat half empty. The laughter was gone. She poured the tea, steam curling around her face like a veil. Outside, the gardeners trimmed the hedges. Men she knew by name, whose children she'd helped with school supplies. She always remembered birthdays, always asked how Mrs. Henderson's arthritis was, always left extra blankets in the staff lounge during winter. No one ever called her Mrs. Moreau in front of Daniel. To him, she was just Clara, present, reliable, invisible. But here, in this house, she was the quiet pulse that kept everything alive. Her phone buzzed on the counter. A message from her sister. "Lena, you okay?" Saw the gala guest list. Valentina's wearing that emerald dress. The one you said you loved but never bought. Clara's fingers stilled. She didn't reply. She didn't need to. The truth sat heavy in her chest, like a stone wrapped in velvet. She walked to the window, watching the ocean in the distance. Calm today, but she knew its moods. Could rage, could drown, but it always returned to stillness, just like her. A soft knock at the service door. Maria, the housekeeper for 15 years, stepped in, eyes red-rimmed. "Senora, I heard what he said last night, on the phone, to her." Clara turned, offering a small, tired smile. "Maria, you shouldn't listen." "I didn't mean to," Maria whispered, voice cracking. "But he called you a ghost in designer clothes." She wiped her eyes quickly. "You're not a ghost. You're the heart of this house." Clara reached out, squeezing Maria's hand. Maybe hearts don't matter when all someone wants is a mirror. She walked back to the counter, lifted her teacup. The warmth seeped into her palms, but it didn't reach the cold knot in her stomach. Later that afternoon, she sat in the library, the room Daniel never entered. Floor-to-ceiling shelves filled with first editions, letters from charities she'd quietly funded, photos of them in places he'd already forgotten. Kyoto in cherry blossom season, a tiny cabin in Maine where they'd gone off-grid for a week after his father died. She opened the bottom drawer of her desk. Inside, not jewelry or letters, but files. Legal binders. Signed, notarized, sealed. Her lawyer's words echoed in her mind from their last meeting. "He never read the post-nup, Clara. He signed it the night before your 5th anniversary, drunk on champagne and his own ego. Clause 7b is clear. If he abandons the marital home without cause and cohabits with another, full title to the estate reverts to you within 72 hours. She hadn't planned to use it. Not really. She'd hoped, foolishly, that love would be enough. But love doesn't survive contempt. She closed the drawer softly, as if tucking away a secret. That evening, she dressed for the gala in a deep navy gown. Simple, elegant. The one Daniel once said made her look like midnight with a soul. She didn't wear diamonds, just her wedding band, and the quiet certainty that tonight would be the last time she played the role of the forgotten wife. As the car pulled up to the Grand Hotel, flashbulbs exploded like stars. Reporters shouted, "Mrs. Moreau, over here. Is it true about Valentina?" She didn't flinch. She walked in, chin high, back straight, heartbreaking but not broken. Because Clara had spent 12 years loving a man who only saw her when it was Daniel appeared first, commanding the room without trying. But it was the woman on his arm who stole the air from Clara's lungs. Valentina. She wore the emerald dress. The one Clara had admired in a boutique window months ago. The one she'd never bought because Daniel had scoffed, "Too flashy for you." Now it clung to Valentina like liquid envy, her smile sharp enough to draw blood. They stopped at the top of the stairs. Daniel leaned down, whispering something that made Valentina laugh. A high, practiced sound that sliced through the orchestra's strings. He kissed her temple, possessive, proud, as if he'd traded up. Clara didn't move, but inside, something cracked open. Not with rage, but with a terrible, quiet clarity. Across the room, Valentina's eyes found hers. Not with guilt, with triumph. A few minutes later, Clara felt a presence beside her. She didn't turn. "You look composed," said a smooth, honeyed voice. Valentina, close enough that Clara could smell her perfume. Expensive, unfamiliar, nothing like the lavender and bergamot she herself wore. "Composure is the last thing a woman like me is allowed to keep," Clara replied, finally meeting her gaze. "So I hold on to it tightly." Valentina smirked, swirling her champagne. "You're not angry? After everything?" "I was," Clara said softly, "but anger burns out. What's left is understanding." "Understanding?" Valentina laughed. "That he never loved you? That you were just convenient?" Clara's fingers tightened around her glass, but her voice stayed calm. "Tell me, Valentina, does he know you used his Amex to pay off your brother's gambling debts last month? Or that you told your best friend you'd only need him for 18 months? Valentina's smile froze. Her eyes flickered just for a second with panic. Clara leaned in, voice barely above a whisper. I don't fight in public. I don't scream, but I see everything. And I remember. Before Valentina could respond, Daniel strode over, arm outstretched, beaming like a king reclaiming his court. There you are, Val, darling, come. Montgomery wants to meet you. Says you've got vision. He didn't even look at Clara. But as they turned to leave, Clara said, clear and quiet, Daniel. He paused, didn't turn fully, just a slight tilt of his head. Yes. Remember what you said to me last summer? When I asked if you still saw me? He sighed, impatient. Clara, not now. You said, I see you every day. That's the problem. A beat of silence. The music swelled. Someone laughed too loudly. Then Daniel turned, finally meeting her eyes, and for the first time in years, he looked uneasy. What's that supposed to mean? It means, Clara said, lifting her chin, that tonight, you'll see me clearer than ever. He frowned, about to retort, but Valentina tugged his arm. Daniel, come on. They're waiting. He let her pull him away, but his glance lingered a second too long. Clara watched them disappear into the crowd, her chest tight, not with sorrow, but with resolve. Later, during dessert, the lights dimmed. A spotlight hit the center stage. Daniel stepped up, microphone in hand, champagne flute raised. The room hushed. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, voice rich with practiced charm. Tonight isn't just about celebrating another successful quarter. It's about new beginnings. He paused, eyes scanning the room, settling, deliberately, on Clara. Some people, he said, stay in your life out of habit. Others, ignite it. He turned to Valentina, who beamed under the light. I've chosen fire. Applause erupted. Cameras flashed. Whispers spread like wildfire. But Clara didn't flinch. She set her untouched dessert down, stood slowly, and walked, not toward the exit, but toward the private elevator that led to the hotel's executive suites. Her phone buzzed in her clutch. A text from her lawyer. Documents filed. 72-hour clock starts at midnight. Title transfer is automatic if he doesn't return to the marital home by then. She glanced at her watch. 11:47 p.m. upstairs. In the suite Daniel had booked for. Valentina, she wouldn't find silk sheets or rose petals. She'd find receipts, texts, bank transfers. Evidence of a woman who'd played her hand too greedily. And Daniel? Not alone. Valentina stepped through the front doors in stilettos and a fur-trimmed coat, her eyes scanning the grand hall like a queen surveying newly conquered land. Daniel followed, tie loose, jaw set, already rehearsing his lines. Clara, he said, voice clipped, we need to talk. She turned slowly, arms crossed over her chest. Not in defense, but in quiet armor. You already spoke last night, loudly enough for everyone to hear. This isn't about last night, he snapped. This is about you packing like you're, I don't know, staging some dramatic exit. I'm leaving, she said simply. You made it clear I'm no longer welcome here. Valentina let out a soft, mocking laugh. Oh, honey, don't be so dramatic. It's not like we're kicking you into the street. Daniel's arranged a lovely apartment in the city. Very modest, perfect for someone who prefers silence. Clara didn't look at her. Her eyes stayed locked on Daniel. Is that true? You've already picked out my new cage. It's not a cage, he said, voice rising. It's generous. After everything I've given you. Given me? Clara's voice cracked, not with tears, but with disbelief. You didn't give me anything, Daniel. I built this life with you. I held you when your father died. I canceled my master's program so you could launch your first fund. I smiled at your mistresses at charity galas so your reputation wouldn't crack. Valentina scoffed. Oh, please. You stayed because you had nowhere else to go. That did it. Clara turned fully now, eyes blazing. Not with rage, but with a sorrow so deep it felt like ice. You think I stayed because I needed you? I stayed because I loved you, even when you stopped seeing me, even when you started looking through me like I was glass. Daniel shifted, uneasy. Clara, stop. This isn't helping. No, she said, stepping forward. You want me gone? Fine. But don't pretend this is kindness. Don't pretend you're doing me a favor by replacing me with someone who sees you as a wallet with a pulse. Valentina's face twisted. How dare you? How dare you? Clara shot back, voice low, lethal. You think I don't know about the offshore account? The fake invoices? The way you told your friend you'd drain him dry before he realizes he's empty? Valentina paled. That's a lie. Is it? Clara pulled her phone from her pocket, tapped once, and played a voice memo. Valentina's own voice, clear as poison. Daniel's sweet, but stupid, thinks love is a transaction. Perfect. I'll have the mansion, the yacht, maybe even the vineyard in Napa. He'll sign anything if you kiss him long enough. Silence. Daniel stared at Valentina, stunned. You said that. Valentina stammered. I was joking. It was just... But Clara wasn't listening anymore. She walked past them both, up the grand staircase, heels clicking like a countdown. Where are you going? Daniel called after her. To pack, she said without turning. Don't worry. I won't take anything that isn't mine. You're being ridiculous, he shouted. This is my house. Clara paused on the landing, looked down at him, really looked. Not at the billionaire, not at the husband, but at the boy who once held her hand during thunderstorms and whispered, I'll always protect you. That, she said softly, is the second biggest mistake you've ever made. Then she disappeared down the hallway. 10 minutes later, she emerged with a single suitcase. Black, worn at the edges, the one she'd brought when they first moved in. She carried no jewelry, no art, no designer bags. Just a photo album, her passport, and the signed copy of their postnuptial agreement. Daniel stood in the foyer, arms crossed, face tight with fury and something else. Fear. You really think walking out like this makes you noble? He said. I don't care what it makes me, she replied, stopping just before the door. I only care that you remember this moment, the moment you chose her over us. She opened the door. Winter air rushed in. And then, just before stepping out, she turned one last time. By the way, Daniel, you might want to check your email. Your lawyer just sent something. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He didn't reach for it, but Valentina did. She pulled it from his coat, glanced at the screen, and her face went white. Subject, urgent title transfer initiated, marital residence, Long Island. What is this? She whispered. Clara smiled, not cruelly, but with the quiet certainty of someone who'd already won. Enjoy the mansion, she said, while it's still yours. And with that, she walked out into the cold, the door clicking shut behind her like the final note of a requiem. It opened instantly. Lena took one look at her sister. No makeup, eyes hollowed by sleepless hours, lips pressed into a line that tried so hard not to break, and pulled her inside without a word. Oh, Clara, she whispered, wrapping her in a thick robe and guiding her to the couch. You're freezing. Clara didn't speak. She just sat, knees drawn to her chest, staring at the steam rising from the mug Lena placed in her hands. Chamomile again. Always chamomile. You didn't have to leave like that, Lena said gently, sitting beside her. You could have fought him in court. Made a scene. Clara shook her head slowly. A scene wouldn't give me back what I lost. And I'm done performing for him. Lena studied her. Then why do you look like you're still holding your breath? Clara's throat tightened. She looked down into her tea, watching the honey swirl. Because part of me still hopes he'll realize that he threw away something real for something shiny and hollow. He won't, Lena said softly. Not until it's too late. Outside, thunder rumbled. The lights flickered. Clara finally looked up, eyes glistening but dry. I didn't take anything, Lena. Not the jewelry, not the car, not even the painting he bought me in Paris. I left it all, because I wanted him to see When he walks through that house and finds it empty, it won't be because I took things. It'll be because he emptied it. Lena reached over, squeezing her hand. And the mansion? A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched Clara's lips. The mansion is already mine, legally, as of midnight tonight. Lena's eyes widened. You're serious? The postnup had a clause. If he abandons the marital home and cohabits with another woman, full title reverts to me within 72 hours. He signed it. He never read it. She took a slow sip of tea. He never reads anything that doesn't flatter him. Silence settled between them, heavy but not suffocating. For the first time in years, Clara felt still, not broken, not victorious, just present. Later that evening, as rain tapped against the windows like impatient fingers, Clara sat alone in the guest room, wrapped in an old quilt Lena had kept since college. On the nightstand, her phone buzzed. A notification, email from Moreau Legal Group. She opened it. Per your instruction and Clause 7B of the postnuptial agreement dated June 12, 2018, title to the property located at 38 Seabreeze Lane, Long Island, has been transferred to Clara Moreau, née Delaney, effective 12:01 a.m. today. All utilities, security systems, and staff contracts remain under your authority. She exhaled, long, slow, like she'd been underwater for years and had just broken the surface. Downstairs, Lena called up, "You hungry? I made soup." Clara stood, walked to the window, and looked out at the storm. "Yes," she said, "I am." But it wasn't just soup she was hungry for. It was peace. Meanwhile, back at the mansion, chaos reigned. Daniel paced the study like a caged animal, phone pressed to his ear. "No, I don't care what the clause says. This is my house. I built it." His lawyer's voice was calm, firm. "You signed it, Daniel, voluntarily, and as of this morning, Clara owns it outright. You're technically trespassing." "What?" he roared. "I'm living in my own home and I'm trespassing?" Valentina burst in, eyes wild. "They changed the security codes. The staff won't let me into the master suite. She said, I'm not authorized." Daniel whirled on her. "You knew about this, didn't you? You pushed me to kick her out. I didn't know she'd—" "You didn't think," he snapped. "You never think. You just take." Valentina recoiled, hurt flashing across her face. But beneath it, panic. "What are we going to do?" "We." He laughed bitterly. "There is no we. There never was." He stormed out, leaving her standing alone in the hallway of a house that no longer belonged to either of them. Back in Brooklyn, Clara turned off the light and lay down. The storm had passed. A sliver of moonlight cut through the curtains. For the first time in 12 years, she slept without dreaming of him. And somewhere, miles away, Daniel sat in the dark library of a mansion that was no longer his, staring at a photo of them on their wedding day. Clara radiant, him grinning like he'd won the world. He hadn't known then that the real prize was the woman beside him. She scrolled slowly, fingers steady, heart quieter than it had been in years. A knock at the door. Lena called from the living room. "You expecting someone?" "No," Clara said, frowning. But when Lena opened the door, it wasn't a neighbor or a delivery. It was Marcus Vale, her lawyer, and the only person who'd known the full extent of her quiet strategy for years. He stepped inside, coat dusted with city grime, eyes sharp but kind. "You look like you slept." 3 hours, Clara admitted, offering him coffee. But they were the first real ones in a decade. Marcus took a seat, setting his briefcase down with a soft thud. "It's done, Clara. Titles recorded. Deeds filed. The mansion is legally, irrevocably yours." Daniel's legal team tried to file an emergency injunction last night. Got denied. Judge called it a textbook case of contractual consequence. Clara nodded, stirring honey into her tea. "He'll fight it." "He already is," Marcus said. "But he's fighting the wrong battle. He thinks this is about money. It never was." She looked up, eyes clear. "What did he say when you told him?" Marcus hesitated. He asked if you'd take a call. I said no. Then he asked if you'd take a meeting. I said not unless he came alone, unarmed with excuses and ready to listen. A faint smile touched Clara's lips. And he hung up. Silence settled, but it wasn't empty. It was charged with the weight of what came next. Marcus leaned forward. Clara, you could sell the mansion tomorrow. Walk away with enough to disappear forever. Start over in Lisbon or Kyoto. No one would blame you. She shook her head. I don't want to disappear. I want to reclaim. Reclaim what? A house full of ghosts. No, she said softly. A life I gave up pieces of every day to keep someone else's dream alive. Now, I want to build my own. Marcus studied her. You're not doing this out of spite. I'm doing it out of truth, she replied. He treated me like I was nothing, but I was always something. I just forgot to remember. Just then, her phone buzzed on the table. A news alert. Moreau Enterprises stock plummets amid scandal. Insider trading allegations surface involving CEO's partner. Clara opened the article. There, Valentina's face, blurred but recognizable, caught leaving a private bank with a man Daniel had fired 2 years ago for fraud. Marcus read over her shoulder. She's burning it all down. She always was, Clara said. She just needed someone foolish enough to hand her the match. Later that afternoon, Clara returned to the mansion. Not as a guest, not as a wife, but as its owner. The gates opened at her command. The security system recognized her biometrics. The staff, loyal, discreet, relieved, greeted her with quiet nods, not out of obligation, but respect. She walked through the grand foyer, heels clicking on marble that still held the echo of Daniel's last cruel words. She didn't flinch. She went straight to the study, the room he'd claimed as his sanctuary, and opened the safe behind the painting of his father. Inside, not cash, not secrets, just a single envelope, addressed in her own handwriting from 10 years ago. For Daniel, on the day you remember what matters. She'd written it after their first major fight, when he'd chosen a board meeting over her birthday dinner. She'd never given it to him. She'd tucked it away, hoping he'd never need it. Now, she placed it on his desk, right where he'd left his abandoned whiskey glass. Then she went to the master bedroom. Valentina's things were still there. Designer shoes tossed carelessly, makeup smeared on the vanity, a half-packed suitcase on the bed. Clara didn't touch them. She simply picked up the house phone on the nightstand and dialed security. Please escort Ms. Valentina Rossi from the premises, she said calmly. Effective immediately. Her access has been revoked. 10 minutes later, Valentina stormed into the hallway, clutching a Louis Vuitton tote, eyes blazing. You can't do this. Daniel will. Daniel doesn't own this house, Clara interrupted, standing at the top of the stairs, arms crossed. I do, and you're trespassing. You think you've won? Valentina spat. He'll come crawling back to me. Men like him always do. Clara stepped down one stair, then another, until she was face to face with her. No, she said, voice low, steady. Men like him crawl back to whoever holds the leash. And right now, the leash is in my hand. Valentina's bravado cracked. You're just a ghost in a pretty dress. Clara smiled, sadly, almost pityingly. And you're just a reflection in a broken mirror. You only shine because someone else lets you. Security arrived. Valentina was let out, shouting threats that dissolved into the wind. Alone again, Clara walked to the balcony overlooking the ocean. The sky was clear, the water restless but beautiful. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. Silence for 3 seconds. Then, a voice hoarse, stripped bare. Clara. It was Daniel. She didn't speak, just listened to his breath, ragged with something she hadn't heard in years. Fear. I don't know where to go, he whispered. She closed her eyes, felt the salt air on her skin, felt the weight of 12 years and the lightness of one decision. Then maybe, she said softly, it's time you learned how to stand on your own. And she hung up, not out of cruelty. Marcus arrived just after 10, briefcase in hand, eyes sharp behind his glasses. He didn't knock. He let himself in, as he had for years, back when he'd quietly helped her structure trusts, shell companies, and ironclad clauses Daniel had signed without reading. "You look like you've already won the war," he said, setting down a folder stamped confidential. "I haven't won anything yet," Clara replied, not looking up. "I've only survived the first battle." He sat across from her, pouring himself coffee from the pot she'd left warming. Daniel's lawyers filed a motion to stay the title transfer, claimed undue influence. The judge laughed them out of chambers. A small, tired smile touched her lips. "Good, but that's not why I'm here." Marcus opened the folder. "I've been digging deeper into Valentina's financial trail. Turns out, she didn't just use Daniel's name. She used his corporate credit lines to fund a shell company in the Caymans. And guess who's listed as the beneficiary?" Clara's pen stilled. "Him? No, her. And she wired $4.2 million out last week, right after the gala." Clara exhaled slowly, her gaze drifting to the ocean beyond the garden. "He's not just humiliated, he's ruined." "Worse," Marcus said. "The SEC is circling. If they connect those transactions to him, and they will, he's looking at civil penalties, maybe criminal charges. His board's already distancing themselves." Silence stretched between them, thick with implication. Clara closed her legal pad. "He'll come to me." "He already tried," Marcus said gently. "3 calls last night. Blocked." She nodded. "He doesn't want me. He wants a lifeline. And I won't be his lifeboat again." Marcus leaned forward. "Then what do you want, Clara?" She turned to him, eyes clear, voice steady. "I want him to understand that consequences aren't punishments. They're lessons. And I want him to learn this one the hard way, so he never forgets it." Later that afternoon, she met with Eleanor, the head of housekeeping, a woman who'd worked for the family since Daniel's father was alive. "Everyone's asking what happens now," Eleanor said, wringing her hands. "The staff. We don't know if we still have jobs." Clara took her hands. "You do. All of you. In fact," she handed her a printed sheet. "I'm restructuring the estate, not as a billionaire's trophy, but as a home. And you'll all be part of it, not as servants, but as partners. With benefits, equity shares, and real security." Eleanor's eyes filled. "Why?" "Because," Clara said softly, "no one should have to choose between dignity and a paycheck." That evening, as dusk painted the sky in bruised purples and golds, Clara walked through the East Wing, the part of the house Daniel had always ignored. Dusty rooms, forgotten art, a piano untouched for years. She ran her fingers over the keys, then sat and played a single, haunting chord. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Please, just 10 minutes. I'll stand outside if you won't let me in." She didn't reply, but she didn't block the number either. Instead, she went to the study and opened the safe again. This time, she took out not just the old envelope, but a second one, freshly sealed, addressed simply, "Daniel." Inside, a single sheet of paper. Not a plea, not a threat, just 3 lines. "You had everything. You threw it away. Now you get to live with what's left." She placed it in the center of his old desk, beneath a paperweight shaped like a compass, north forever pointing toward the sea. Outside, the wind picked up. Somewhere in the city, Daniel sat in a rented room above a laundromat, staring at his silent phone, wondering if the woman he'd discarded would ever look at him again. And in the mansion that once bore his name, but now carried hers, Clara turned off the lights, one by one, until only the moon remained to witness the quiet birth of a new beginning. The legal machinery was already turning. The contracts were signed. The truth, Lena's, only to be turned away by a neighbor who said, "She's not here, and even if she was, she wouldn't see you." Now, he'd come to the one place he thought might still hold a sliver of mercy. He pressed the intercom. Silence. Then, a voice, calm, professional, unfamiliar. "Yes, this is Daniel Morrow. I need to speak with Clara." A pause. Then, Mrs. Moreau is not receiving visitors. I'm not a visitor, he said, voice cracking. You're not family, sir, and you're not authorized. The line went dead. Daniel stared at the gate, heart hammering. He hadn't expected welcome, but he hadn't expected erasure, as if he'd never belonged here at all. Inside the house, Clara watched him from the second-floor window, hidden behind velvet drapes. She saw the slump in his shoulders, the way he kept glancing at the driveway, as if Valentina might appear, rescue him from this humiliation. But Valentina was long gone, and Daniel was finally alone. Downstairs, Eleanor approached with a tray of tea. He's still out there, isn't he? Clara nodded, not turning. Let him stand. He looks broken. He is broken, Clara said softly. But not because I broke him. He broke himself. I just stopped holding the pieces together. Eleanor hesitated. Do you think he'll change? I don't care if he changes, Clara replied. I care that he feels it. The weight of what he did. The cost of treating love like an accessory. Just then, her phone rang. Marcus. She answered on speaker. Tell me you have news. I do, he said, voice tight. Valentina's been spotted at JFK. One-way ticket to Monaco. But here's the twist. She tried to liquidate a safety deposit box in Daniel's name this morning. The bank froze it. Turns out your name was listed as co-signer on that account too. Another clause he never read. Clara closed her eyes. How much was in it? $1.8 million. Wedding gift from his mother. He forgot to remove you after the prenup amendment. A bitter laugh escaped her. He thought he was protecting his fortune. He was actually building my foundation. Marcus paused. There's more. The SEC subpoenaed his personal devices. They found texts between him and Valentina discussing creative accounting to hide her withdrawals. He's not just complicit, Clara. He approved them. Her stomach dropped. Not from shock, from sorrow. He didn't just betray me, she whispered. He betrayed his own integrity. Outside, Daniel began pacing, like a ghost haunting his own life. Inside, Clara turned from the window. Marcus. What happens to him now? Depends. If he cooperates, maybe fines, probation. If he fights, prison's on the table. She didn't speak for a long moment. Then he'll fight. He always does. That night, rain returned, cold, relentless. Daniel was still at the gate when the storm hit. He didn't move, just stood there, soaked, staring at the lit windows like they held answers. Clara watched from the library, wrapped in a blanket, a glass of red wine untouched on the table. Eleanor appeared in the doorway. He's shivering. I know. Should I send someone with a coat? Clara shook her head. No, let him feel the cold. But then she stood, walked to the desk, took a key from the drawer. Not the house key, the one to the guest cottage, the small stone house at the edge of the property, tucked among the pines. Tell security to open the cottage, she said quietly. Leave the lights on, and a blanket, but don't tell him it's from me. Eleanor nodded, eyes soft with understanding. You're not forgiving him. No, Clara said, gazing out at the rain-lashed garden. I'm giving him shelter, not because he deserves it, but because I refuse to become the kind of person who lets someone freeze in the dark. Later, as thunder rolled over the coast, Daniel stumbled toward the cottage, drawn by the warm light in the window. He opened the door, dripping wet, and found a fire already lit, dry clothes folded on the bed, and a note on the mantel. This isn't Mercy. It's who his phone buzzed on the nightstand. Not Clara. Not Marcus, his CFO. He answered, voice rough. What? Daniel, it's bad. The board just voted. They're ousting you. Effective immediately. He went still. On what grounds? Breach of fiduciary duty. Misuse of corporate assets. And the SEC just filed a civil complaint. They're naming you as a primary respondent. Daniel's breath caught. They can't do that without proof. They have Valentina's bank records, your emails, even that damn voice memo she didn't know was recorded. He closed his eyes. Of course, Clara hadn't just protected herself. She documented everything. Not out of malice, out of necessity. Do they know about the Caymans? He asked quietly. They know everything. Silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Then his CFO added, softer now, I'm sorry, Daniel, but you did this to yourself. The line went dead. Daniel dropped the phone like it had burned him. He stood, walked to the window and looked out toward the main house, dark now except for a single light in the west wing. Clara's study. He wanted to hate her. He tried to hate her, but all he felt was shame, because she hadn't stolen his life. She just stopped pretending to share it. The next morning, Clara sat in her study, reviewing blueprints for a new venture. A boutique real estate advisory firm, focused on helping women reclaim financial autonomy after divorce. She'd named it Aurora Holdings, after the dawn that follows the longest night. Her phone rang. Marcus, they're moving fast, he said without greeting. Moreau Enterprises just issued a press release distancing themselves from Daniel. They're calling Valentina a rogue associate and claiming Daniel was misled. Clara scoffed. Convenient. But here's what's worse, Marcus continued. Valentina's lawyer just leaked documents to the Financial Times. Photos, texts, wire transfers, all pointing to Daniel authorizing the fraud. The headlines already trending. Billionaire's empire built on lies, and his wife's silence. Clara's pen stilled. They're painting me as a victim. You were a victim. No, she said firmly. I was a partner who chose patience over war. Now they're turning my restraint into weakness. She stood, walking to the window. Daniel was outside, standing by the rose garden, the one she'd planted the year they lost the baby. He wasn't pruning, just staring at the thorns. He's still there, she murmured. He has nowhere else to go, Marcus said. His accounts are frozen. His penthouse lease was terminated. Even his club memberships were revoked. Clara exhaled. Then it's time. For what? For him to face what he's done. Not just to me, but to everyone who trusted him. That afternoon, she walked down the garden path, heels silent on the gravel. Daniel turned when he heard her, eyes wide with something between hope and terror. Clara, don't, she said, stopping a few feet away. Don't say my name like it's a prayer. You stopped believing in me long before you stopped loving me. He flinched. I never stopped loving you. You stopped seeing me, she corrected, voice trembling. Not with anger, but with grief. You looked at me and saw a placeholder, a backdrop, something to keep your world tidy while you chased brighter lights. I was wrong, he whispered. I know that now. Do you? She stepped closer. Because if you truly knew, you wouldn't be standing here hoping I'll fix this. You'd be on your knees apologizing to the people you ruined. The employees who lost pensions, the investors who trusted you, the staff you treated like furniture. His shoulders slumped. I don't know how to fix it. Then start by not asking me to do it for you. A long silence. Wind rustled the roses. Then, quietly, what happens to me now? Clara looked at him. Not as her husband, not as her enemy, but as a man finally stripped bare. You have two choices, she said. You can run, try to disappear like Valentina, or you can stay, face the consequences, rebuild, not your fortune, but your character. He swallowed hard. And if I stay, will you ever forgive me? She held his gaze, steady, unflinching. Forgiveness isn't mine to give yet, Daniel. First, you have to earn the right to ask for it. She turned to leave. Clara, he called after her, voice breaking. I'm sorry for everything. She paused but didn't look back. I know, she said softly, but sorry doesn't rebuild trust. Time does, and actions do. And right now, you've got a lot of both to spare. And with that, she walked away, leaving him alone in the garden, with nothing but because it was hers. Bought with her own inheritance, years before Daniel's name meant anything. Whispers rippled through the crowd as she approached. Is that Clara Moreau? I heard she owns the Long Island estate now. They say Daniel's living in a cottage on her property. Like a servant. No, like a penitent. She ignored them all, chin high, eyes forward. Inside the grand ballroom, crystal chandeliers cast fractured light over gowns and tuxedos, over champagne flutes and practiced smiles. But when Clara entered, the room stilled, not out of pity, but respect. She wasn't a ghost anymore. She was a reckoning wrapped in grace. Across the room, Daniel stood near the bar, dressed in a borrowed suit, clean-shaven, eyes shadowed but clear. He hadn't been invited. He'd come anyway, hoping perhaps for a glance, a nod, some sign that he still existed in her world. He saw her, and for the first time he didn't look at her with entitlement. He looked at her with awe. Clara didn't go to him. She walked straight to the center of the room, where a small stage had been set for the evening's honorees. The host, a famed philanthropist, smiled as she approached. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, voice warm, "tonight, we recognize not just wealth, but wisdom. Please welcome Clara Delaney, founder of Aurora Holdings, and the new steward of one of Long Island's most historic estates." Applause erupted, genuine, not polite. Clara stepped to the microphone, calm, composed, but her pulse thrummed beneath her skin. This wasn't just a speech. It was a declaration. "Thank you," she began, voice clear and steady. "A month ago, I stood in this very room and watched the man I loved choose illusion over truth. He thought power was in control, in possession, in discarding what no longer amused him." She paused, letting the words settle. "But real power," she continued, "is in resilience, in dignity, in walking away from a life that no longer honors you and building one that does." She glanced toward Daniel, not with anger, not with pity, with finality. "I didn't take the mansion because I wanted his things. I took it because I refused to let his choices define my worth. And tonight, I stand here not as Mrs. Moreau, but as Clara Delaney, a woman who remembered her name before it was almost erased." The room fell utterly silent. Then applause, not scattered, thunderous. From the back, Marcus watched, pride in his eyes. Lena wiped a tear. Even old board members who'd once dismissed Clara as just the wife nodded in quiet admiration. Daniel stood frozen, heart pounding. He wanted to vanish, but he also wanted desperately to be seen by her one last time. As the crowd parted, Clara descended the stage. She didn't head for the exit. She walked straight toward him. He held his breath. She stopped a foot away. "You came. I had to see you," he said, voice low. "Not as the man who hurt you, just as someone who finally sees you." She studied him, the raw honesty in his eyes, the absence of performance. "Do you?" "I do," he whispered. "And I'm ashamed of how long it took." A silence stretched between them, charged with everything unsaid. Then Clara reached into her clutch and handed him a single envelope. "What's this?" he asked. "Your severance," she said simply. "From the estate. Not money. Opportunity. I've spoken with the director of the Harbor Recovery Center. They need someone with business experience to rebuild their job training program. Pays little, demands humility, and it's yours if you want it." He stared at the envelope like it was sacred. "Why would you do this?" "Because I don't want your suffering," she said. "I want your growth, and if you're serious about change, this is where it starts." He looked up, eyes glistening. "Will I ever earn your trust again?" She held his gaze, unflinching. "Trust isn't given back, Daniel. It's rebuilt, one honest day at a time. And you've only just begun." She turned to leave. "Clara," he called softly. She paused. "Thank you," he said, "for not letting me disappear." She didn't smile, but something in her expression softened, just for a second. Then she walked away, not toward the past, but into a future she'd claimed for herself. And behind her, Daniel stood taller than he had in years. Not because he owned she'd spoken her truth, claimed her name, offered Daniel a path, not a pardon, but something still coiled in her chest, tight, unresolved, because forgiveness wasn't the same as forgetting. And justice wasn't the same as closure. Inside, the house was quiet. The staff had retired. Only one light burned in the east wing, the guest cottage. She knew he was still there, and she knew he wouldn't sleep. Not after tonight. She walked through the garden, gravel crunching beneath her heels, the scent of wet earth and jasmine wrapping around her like a memory. When she reached the cottage door, she didn't knock. She simply turned the handle and stepped inside. Daniel sat by the fireplace, the envelope she'd given him open on his lap, his face half lit by the flames. He looked up, startled but not surprised. "You came," he said, voice rough. "I did." He stood slowly, as if afraid sudden movement might shatter the moment. "I was just reading the details. The center, the program. It's good work." "It is," she said, stepping farther in. "Real work, not built on lies or leverage. Just hands, hearts, and honesty." He swallowed. "I don't deserve it." "No," she agreed softly. "You don't. But that's not the point." He looked at her then, not with the hunger of a man begging for rescue, but with the quiet ache of one who finally understood the cost of his choices. "Why are you here, Clara?" She walked to the window, arms crossed, gaze fixed on the mansion in the distance. Her home now, not his. "Because I need you to hear this. Not as my husband, not as the man who broke me, but as the man who might one day be worthy of remembering me." He stayed silent, listening. "You accused me tonight, without saying it, of playing the victim," she said, turning to face him. "But I wasn't playing. I was surviving. While you were parading Valentina through boardrooms, I was meeting with forensic accountants. While you were signing her name on corporate cards, I was notarizing clauses that would keep this house from becoming her trophy. I didn't do it to hurt you, Daniel. I did it because I refused to be erased." His eyes dropped. "I thought you were passive, quiet, compliant." "I was strategic," she corrected. "There's a difference." He nodded, shame burning in his throat. "I treated your silence like weakness, and now you see it for what it was," she said. "Strength that chose patience over war, until war was the only language you understood." A log cracked in the fire. Sparks rose like fleeting stars. "Do you hate me?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. She considered the question, not with anger but with sorrow. "No. Hate takes energy I no longer have to give you. But I don't trust you, and I won't pretend otherwise." He took a step closer. "What would it take?" "Time," she said. "Consistency. And the courage to face the people you hurt. Not just me. The employees whose pensions were tied to your reckless deals. The vendors you stiffed. The staff you ignored. Start there. Not with me. With them." He exhaled, shoulders slumping. "It feels impossible." "Good," she said. "Then you'll know it's real." She turned to leave. "Clara," he called, desperation threading his voice. "If I do this, if I really change, will there ever be a place for me in your life again?" She paused at the door, hand on the frame. Rain tapped gently on the roof. "I don't know," she said honestly. "And that's the truth you have to live with. Not every wound heals with reunion. Some heal with distance, some with silence, and some with you becoming someone I can look at without flinching." She looked back at him, really looked. Saw the boy who once held her hand through panic attacks. Saw the man who'd forgotten how to be gentle. Saw the stranger trying to find his way back. "I'm not waiting for you, Daniel," she said softly. "But I won't block your path either. Walk it well." And with that, she stepped out into the rain. Behind her, Daniel sank back into the chair, the envelope clutched in his hands like a lifeline. Outside, Clara didn't hurry back to the house. She walked slowly through the garden, letting the rain wash over her face. Cool, cleansing, relentless. For the first time in years, she felt no weight on her shoulders. Only the future, wide, uncertain, and entirely hers. And somewhere behind her, in the flickering warmth of a borrowed cottage, a man like closing a circle. Then the alarm chimed. Security feed flickered to life on the wall screen. Daniel was at the main gate again, But this time he wasn't alone. Valentina stood beside him. Clara's breath caught. Valentina looked different, no designer coat, no bold lipstick. Her hair was pulled back, her eyes wide with something that might have been fear. She clutched a leather portfolio to her chest like a shield. Clara's fingers tightened around her pen. "Open the gate," she said into the intercom. "Ma'am?" came the guard's voice. "Are you sure?" "Yes." She watched on the screen as the gates parted. Daniel walked slowly, shoulders tense. Valentina followed, hesitant, like a ghost unsure if she was welcome in the world of the living. Clara didn't go to meet them. She waited in the foyer, arms crossed, heart steady. They entered. The air crackled. Valentina's eyes darted around the grand hall, the same space where she'd once strutted like a queen. Now she looked small, defeated. "Clara," Daniel began, voice low. "She needs to talk to you." "I have nothing to say to her," Clara replied, gaze fixed on Valentina. "You stole from him. You lied. You used his name like it was a weapon." Valentina flinched. "I know. Then why are you here?" Valentina stepped forward, hands trembling as she opened the portfolio. "Because I'm done running." She placed a stack of documents on the marble console. Bank statements, email chains, a signed affidavit. "I went to the SEC," she said, voice shaking but clear. "I gave them everything. The offshore accounts, the fake invoices, the texts where Daniel approved the transfers." She looked at Clara, eyes glistening. "But I also gave them proof that I forged his signature on 3 major wire requests. He didn't know about those." Daniel stared at her, stunned. "You're protecting me?" "I'm freeing myself," she corrected. "I spent months pretending I was smarter than everyone, but I was just scared. Scared of being nothing without a rich man's name." She turned back to Clara. "You were right that night. I'm just a reflection. But I don't want to be someone else's echo anymore." Silence stretched, thick and fragile. Clara studied her, not with triumph, but with wary curiosity. "Why tell me this?" "Because you're the only one who saw through me," Valentina said. "And because I need your help." Clara frowned. "My help?" Valentina swallowed hard. "I have nowhere to go. My family disowned me. My so-called friends vanished when the scandal broke. And the SEC froze everything." She looked down. "I slept in a bus station last night." Daniel shifted uncomfortably. "I brought her here because I thought you might. I don't owe you either of you shelter." Clara cut in, voice cool. "I know," Valentina whispered, "but I'm not asking for a home. I'm asking for a chance. I heard about your new firm. I have a degree in finance. I know how these systems work, from the inside. I could help women like you avoid men like him." She gestured to Daniel, not with malice, but with regret. Clara's eyes flicked to him. "And you? You vouch for her." "I don't trust her," Daniel said honestly, "but I believe she's telling the truth now. And she saved me from prison." Clara exhaled slowly, walking to the window. The garden was in bloom. Roses, lavender, new life pushing through old soil. Finally, she turned. "There's a small apartment above the stables. Empty since the groundskeeper retired. You can stay there for 2 weeks. No exceptions." Valentina's breath hitched. "Thank you." "But," Clara added, stepping closer, voice low and firm, "if you lie to me once, if you manipulate, steal, or use my name for your gain, I won't just evict you. I'll make sure the SEC sees every last secret you're still hiding." "Understood." Valentina nodded, tears spilling. "Understood." Clara looked at Daniel. "And you stay out of this. Her path isn't yours to manage." He nodded. "I know." As Valentina turned to leave, Clara called after her. "One more thing." Valentina froze. "The emerald dress," Clara said. "Burn it." A ghost of a smile touched Valentina's lips. "Already did." And with that, she walked out. Not with the strut of a mistress, but with the quiet steps of someone learning to stand on her own. Daniel lingered. "You surprised me." Clara met his eyes. Don't mistake mercy for weakness, Daniel. I'm not helping her for you. I'm helping her because even broken mirrors can be melted down and made into something new. He nodded, humbled. You're building something beautiful here. No, she said softly. I'm rebuilding something true. And as he walked away, Clara stood alone in the foyer, surrounded by the echoes of betrayal, but breathing the air of a future unshackled. Outside, the wind carried the scent of rain and renewal. A knock at the door. Come in, Clara said, not looking up. Valentina stepped inside, wrapped in a borrowed sweater, hair damp from the storm. She held a steaming mug. I made tea, chamomile. I remembered you liked it. Clara finally looked up. You've been here 3 days. Why the sudden kindness? Valentina set the mug down, hands trembling slightly. Because I saw the photo on your desk. The one of you and Daniel in Maine. You looked happy. We were, Clara said quietly. Once. I ruined that, Valentina whispered. Not just for you, for him too. I thought I was taking something valuable, but I was just breaking something real. Clara studied her, the rawness in her eyes, the absence of performance. Why tell me this now? Because tomorrow, I meet with the SEC again, Valentina said, voice cracking. And they're going to ask if Daniel knew about the forged signatures. If I say he didn't, he walks free. If I say he did, he goes to prison. She looked at Clara, tears welling. I need to know. What would you do? Clara stood slowly, walking to the window. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the garden in stark white. I'd tell the truth, she said. Not to punish him, but to free yourself. Valentina swallowed hard. But what if the truth hurts someone you care about? Clara turned, eyes sharp. Do you care about him? Valentina hesitated. Then softly, I cared about what he gave me, not who he was. But now, I see him trying, really trying, and it makes me ashamed. Clara stepped closer. Then do the right thing. Not for him, but for the woman you're trying to become. Just then, thunder rolled, and the lights flickered. A moment later, the power went out. Darkness swallowed the room. In the sudden black, Valentina's voice trembled. I'm scared. Of what? Of being alone. Of starting over with nothing. Clara reached out, not to comfort, but to steady. You're not nothing. You're someone who chose to stop lying. That's more than most people ever do. Silence stretched, filled only by the drumming rain. Then, from the hallway, a voice, hoarse, hesitant. Clara? Daniel stood in the doorway, drenched, holding a flashlight. He must have walked from the cottage in the storm. What are you doing here? Clara asked, guarded. I heard Valentina was meeting with the SEC tomorrow, he said, stepping inside. I came to tell her, don't protect me. I made choices. I own them. Valentina stared at him. Even if it means prison? Especially then, he said. Because if I don't face what I've done, I'll never be more than the man who threw away the best thing he ever had. Clara's chest tightened. She saw it then. Not manipulation, not desperation, but genuine remorse. Valentina turned to her. Will you be there? At the hearing? Clara considered it. No, this is your truth to tell, not mine. But if I do this, will there be a place for me? After. Clara looked at her. Not as a rival, not as a thief, but as a woman clawing her way out of the dark. If you tell the truth, Clara said, and live by it, then yes, there's always a place for someone who chooses to become honest. Valentina nodded, tears mixing with rain on her cheeks. Daniel stepped forward. Clara, thank you for not letting us hide. She didn't smile, but something in her softened. Don't thank me yet. The hardest part is still coming. Outside, the storm raged on. But inside the study, for the first time, 3 broken people stood in the same room. Not as enemies, not as lovers, but as survivors. And in the flickering beam of Daniel's flashlight, Clara saw something she hadn't allowed herself to hope for. Not reconciliation, but redemption. Messy, uncertain, and painfully human. The next morning, the sky cleared. Valentina left before dawn, suitcase in hand. A single note left on Clara's desk. I told the truth. All of it. Thank you for showing me that honesty isn't weakness. It's the only way to breathe. Clara read it, folded it carefully, and placed it in the drawer beside Daniel's old compass. Then she walked out onto the terrace, watching the sunrise paint the ocean in gold. Somewhere in the city, Valentina faced her reckoning. Somewhere in a modest apartment, Daniel prepared to face his. And here, on the edge of the sea, Clara stood, no longer waiting, no longer broken. Headlines scrolled across her tablet. Moreau Enterprises collapses amid fraud scandal. Former billionaire faces civil penalties. Criminal probe closed. Wife emerges as unlikely architect of redemption. She didn't flinch. She'd stopped reading the stories days ago. Truth wasn't in headlines. It was in choices. Her phone buzzed. Marcus. They settled, he said, voice tight with disbelief. SEC accepted Daniel's full cooperation, restitution plan, and public admission of negligence. No prison, but he's bankrupt, reputation's in ruins, and the board stripped him of everything, down to his name on the building. Clara exhaled slowly, fingers curling around her coffee cup. And Valentina? Her testimony saved him from criminal charges. She's been offered a compliance role at a nonprofit, low-profile, high-integrity. She took it. Pause. He's outside, Marcus added quietly. In the lobby. Says he won't come up unless you say it's okay. Clara looked down through the glass wall. There he was, Daniel, in a plain gray coat, no tie, standing apart from the crowd like a man who no longer belonged to the world he once ruled. He held a single folder. No lawyers, no entourage, just himself. Send him up, she said. Minutes later, the elevator doors opened. He stepped out, hesitant, eyes scanning the modern space. Light wood, open desks, walls lined with photos of women Clara had helped rebuild their lives. Nothing like the cold opulence of his old empire. You came, she said, not turning from the window. I had to, he replied, voice rough. Not to ask for anything, just to tell you. He walked closer, placed the folder on her desk. Inside, legal documents, a signed affidavit, public statement. I admitted everything, he said, to the press, to the investors, to the staff I wronged. I didn't hide behind misled or advised poorly. I said, I chose greed over integrity. I betrayed trust. And I'm sorry. Clara finally turned. Why now? Because Valentina told the truth, he said, eyes glistening. And it freed me, not from consequences, but from the lie I'd been living. I thought power was control, but real power is accountability. She studied him, the absence of arrogance, the quiet weight in his shoulders. You lost everything. I did, he admitted. But I found something I didn't know I'd lost myself. Silence stretched between them, not heavy, but honest. You could have disappeared, she said. Started over somewhere quiet. I could have, he agreed. But I owed it to you and to the people I hurt to face what I did. Not in shadows, in daylight. She walked to her desk, opened the folder, read his statement. It was raw, unflinching, no excuses. You wrote this yourself? Every word. She looked up. It won't bring back what you broke. No, he said, but maybe it can help someone else not make my mistakes. A long pause. Rain began to fall outside, soft at first, then steady. Daniel, she said finally, what do you want now? He didn't answer right away, just looked at her, not with longing, but with clarity. I want to work, not for you, not near you, but in the world you're building. The Harbor Center accepted me. I start Monday, minimum wage, cleaning floors, mentoring kids who've been told they're nothing. It's not much. It's everything, she said softly. He nodded. I know. He turned to leave, but paused at the door. Clara, thank you. Not for saving me, for refusing to let me stay lost. She didn't reply, But as he stepped into the elevator, she whispered, so softly only the rain could hear, "You're welcome." Later that evening, she returned to the mansion. The staff greeted her with quiet smiles. The garden bloomed under twilight. In the distance, the cottage light was off. Daniel had moved out that morning into a studio apartment near the recovery center. She walked to the library, opened the safe, and placed his public statement inside, next to the old envelope she'd never given him. Then she lit a single candle, sat by the window, and watched the storm pass. Somewhere in the city, a man who once owned the skyline swept floors in a community center, learning humility one mop stroke at a time. And here, in the house that had once been a cage, Clara breathed deeply, free, whole, and finally at peace. Because the greatest revenge wasn't destruction. It was becoming so unshakably yourself that the past couldn't touch you. Not on her cell. Not through Marcus. He stood at the edge of the estate's driveway, just beyond the gate, as he always did now, holding a payphone-style burner, dialing the landline she'd kept active for emergencies. He knew she'd answer. She always did. The phone rang once. "Clara," he said when she picked up, voice quiet against the hush of falling snow. "I know I shouldn't ask, but I don't have anywhere else to turn." She didn't speak right away. Outside her window, the garden lay buried under white, silent and still. "What is it?" "My mother's sick," he said, the words cracking like thin ice. "Advanced stage. She asked for me, but I can't afford the flight to Geneva. My wages at the center barely cover rent. And I sold everything, even my watch." Clara closed her eyes. She remembered his mother, elegant, sharp-tongued, but the only person who'd ever treated her like family. The woman who'd slipped her a handwritten note on their wedding day. "He's brilliant, but blind. Don't let him forget how to see you. She doesn't know." "What happened? Does she?" Clara asked. "No," Daniel whispered. "I couldn't tell her. Not like this. She still thinks I'm him." A long silence stretched, filled only by the soft hiss of the line and the whisper of snow against glass. "Clara," he said, voice breaking, "I'm not asking for money. I'd never—" "I'll book the flight," she interrupted gently. He froze. "What?" "I'll book a first-class ticket to Geneva, under your name. You'll leave tomorrow morning." "But why?" His voice trembled. "After everything I did. Because your mother loved me when no one else in your world did," Clara said, walking to the window. "And because you're going to sit by her side, hold her hand, and be the son she raised, not the man you became." Tears choked his voice. "I don't deserve this." "Maybe not," she said, "but she deserves to see you one last time. And you deserve to say goodbye without shame." He sobbed then. Quiet, broken sounds she'd never heard from him before. Not in anger, not in pride, in grief. "Thank you," he whispered. "I'll pay you back. Every cent." "No," she said softly. "Don't pay me back. Pay it forward. When you return, volunteer at the women's shelter downtown. Teach financial literacy. Help someone rebuild what you helped destroy." "I will," he promised. "I swear it." The next morning, snow still falling, Clara watched from the terrace as a town car arrived to take him to the airport. He carried one small bag, his coat worn at the cuffs, his posture humbler than she'd ever seen it. He paused at the gate, turned and looked toward the house, as if hoping just once to see her. She stepped onto the balcony. He saw her, and for the first time in years, he didn't look away in shame. He simply nodded, and she nodded back. No words, no grand gestures, just two people who'd been through fire, acknowledging that the other had survived. Later that day, Marcus called. "You paid for his flight?" "I did." He sighed. "You're going to keep saving him, aren't you?" "No," Clara said, gazing at the snow-covered roses. "I'm not saving him. I'm honoring the boy his mother raised, the one who still exists beneath the wreckage. That's not weakness, Marcus. It's clarity." Days passed. Geneva, a hospital room with pale light and the scent of antiseptic. Daniel held his mother's hand as she drifted in and out of sleep, whispering stories from his childhood. How he used to build forts out of blankets. How he cried when his goldfish died. How he once gave his lunch to a homeless man because he looked hungrier than me. She smiled faintly. You were always kind, Mon Fils. Don't let the world steal that. I won't, Maman, he whispered. Not again. On the third night, she passed quietly, her hand in his. Back in New York, Clara received a letter handwritten on hotel stationery. She knew, it read, not the details, but she knew I'd lost my way. Her last words were, go back to Clara. She'll show you how to come home. I don't know if I'll ever deserve that, but I'm trying. Every day. Clara folded the letter, placed it in the safe beside his public statement and the old envelope. Outside, the snow began to melt, and somewhere across the ocean, a man boarded a plane, not as a billionaire, not as a failure, but as someone learning slowly how to be human. Clara lit a candle that night, not for mourning, but for hope, because sometimes the deepest wounds don't close with silence. Then the intercom buzzed. Ma'am, came the guard's voice, strained. He's here again, at the gate, in the rain. She didn't need to ask who. He's barefoot, the guard added, disbelief threading his words. No coat, just a soaked shirt and trousers. He says he won't leave until he sees you. Clara's breath caught, not from fear, from the sheer, raw weight of what this meant. She walked to the front door herself, ignoring the staff's worried glances. When she opened it, the wind howled in, rain slashing sideways. And there he was, Daniel, not the billionaire, not even the penitent from the cottage. This man was hollowed out, drenched to the bone, hair plastered to his forehead, feet raw and bleeding on the gravel. He trembled, not from cold, but from something deeper. Shame, grief, a kind of surrender so total it looked like collapse. He saw her and dropped to his knees in the mud, not for effect, not for pity, because he could no longer stand under the weight of what he'd done. Clara, he choked out, voice shredded. Please. She didn't move, didn't speak, just watched the rain run down his face like he was being baptized in regret. You don't have to say anything, he whispered, head bowed. Just let me be here, even if it's in the shed, even if it's on the floor. I have nowhere else. My apartment was repossessed. I fell behind on rent after the medical bills. The center let me stay in the back room, but I couldn't face them. Not like this. He looked up, eyes red-rimmed, raw. I lost everything, again. And this time, it's because I finally saw what I threw away. Clara's chest ached. Not with longing, but with the terrible clarity of witnessing someone truly break open. You think coming here like this will fix it? She asked, voice low but steady. No, he said, shaking his head. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve shelter. But I had to see you, to tell you, I'm sorry, not for losing money, not for the scandal, but for looking at you like you were nothing, for making you feel invisible in your own life. Rain dripped from his chin. He didn't wipe it away. I used to think love was something you earned by being perfect, he said, voice cracking. But you loved me when I was broken, and I punished you for it. Clara stepped forward, just one step, onto the porch's edge, where the rain kissed her shoes. Do you know what hurt the most? She asked softly. Not the mistress, not the public humiliation. It was that you never once asked if I was okay. You just assumed I'd stay, like I was furniture, like I had no choice. He flinched as if struck. I was arrogant, blind, cruel. Yes, she said, you were. Silence stretched, filled only by the drumming rain and his ragged breath. Then, quietly, will you let me in? She studied him, the raw honesty in his eyes, the absence of performance, the way his hands shook not from cold, but from the sheer effort of staying present. No, she said. His face fell. But, she continued, I'll have Maria bring you dry clothes and a blanket. You can sleep in the guest cottage tonight. Tomorrow you'll go to the center and ask for your job back. If they take you, you'll work. If they don't, you'll find another way. But you won't hide here. He nodded, tears mixing with rain. Thank you. And Daniel? She held his gaze. Don't kneel for me again. Stand, even when it hurts, especially then. He pushed himself up slowly, wincing as his bare feet touched the wet stone. He didn't look at her with hope. He looked at her with gratitude for not letting him disappear. As Maria hurried out with towels and a robe, Clara turned back toward the house. But before she closed the door, she paused. Your mother was right, she said without looking back. You were always kind. Don't let the world or your shame steal that again. Inside, the fire crackled in the hearth. The mansion was warm, quiet, whole. Outside, a broken man wrapped himself in borrowed wool, staring at the house that once was his, and wondering, for the first time, if redemption wasn't about getting back what you lost, but about becoming someone worthy of what remains. And then, on a quiet Thursday evening, he came back to the estate. Not to beg, not to hide, but because Clara had sent word. Meet me in the garden. At sunset. He arrived early, wearing clean but worn clothes, hands still rough from work. He stood by the rose arbor, the same place where she'd once told him he'd have to earn the right to ask for forgiveness. She appeared as the sun dipped below the trees, casting long golden shadows across the lawn. She wore a simple linen dress, her hair loose, no jewelry. Just Clara, whole, unshaken. You asked to see me, she said, stopping a few feet away. He nodded, hands clasped in front of him like a man standing before a judge. I wanted to tell you, I got my job back. Full hours. They're even letting me co-lead the financial literacy workshop next month. I heard, she said softly. You're doing good work. I'm trying, he said, not to win you back, not for show, just because it's right. She studied him, the humility in his posture, the quiet steadiness in his eyes. The man who once demanded the world now found meaning in mopping a hallway. Why did you really come back that night? She asked suddenly. In the rain, barefoot. Was it just desperation? He looked down, then back at her, unflinching. No, it was clarity. I realized I'd spent my whole life running. From failure, from shame, from the truth. But that night I couldn't run anymore. And the only place I could think to go was here. Not because you owed me anything, but because you were the only person who ever saw me. Really saw me and stayed anyway. His voice broke. Even when I didn't deserve it. Clara's throat tightened. She turned toward the ocean, where the last light bled into violet. Do you know what I felt when you kicked me out? It wasn't anger. It was grief. Grief for the man I thought you were. The one who held my hand during thunderstorms. The one who cried when we lost our baby. That man. I mourned him long before you left. Daniel's eyes filled. He's still here, he whispered, buried under years of ego and fear. But he's trying to come back. She faced him then, eyes glistening but dry. Then don't confuse remorse with transformation, Daniel. Remorse says, I'm sorry I got caught. Transformation says, I'll never do it again, even when no one's watching. I know, he said, and I'm not asking for your trust. I'm just asking if you can see me now, not the ghost of who I was, not the monster I became, just me, flawed, trying, human. A long silence stretched between them, filled only by the whisper of wind through the pines. Then Clara stepped closer. I see you, she said quietly, and that's why I'm telling you this. Don't come back here hoping I'll save you. I won't, but I will witness you. If you keep showing up, if you keep choosing honesty over pride, service over status, then I'll remember the man you're becoming. He swallowed hard. Is that enough? For now, she said. It has to be. He nodded, tears slipping free. Thank you. She turned to leave but paused. One more thing. Yes. Wear shoes next time, she said, a ghost of a smile touching her lips. Even penitents need to protect their feet. He let out a soft, broken laugh, real, unguarded. And as she walked away, he didn't follow. He just stood there, in the fading light, feeling something he hadn't felt in years. Not ownership, not control, but peace. Because for the first time, he wasn't trying to win her back. He was simply becoming someone who might one day deserve to stand beside, bloomed wild and free now, no longer pruned into submission, but allowed to grow as it wished, just like her. Inside, the house hummed with quiet purpose. Aurora Holdings had outgrown its downtown office. She'd converted the East Wing into a community space. Financial workshops, legal aid clinics, a sanctuary for women rebuilding their lives. Today, they'd hosted a graduation. 8 women who'd escaped controlling relationships, now certified in real estate, accounting, even small business management. One of them had hugged Clara and whispered, "You gave us back our names." She'd smiled. "You never lost them. You just forgot how to say them out loud." Now, as twilight deepened, her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "He's outside. Says it's important. No drama. Just a proposal." Clara's breath caught. Not with fear, but with something quieter. Anticipation. She walked to the gate herself. Daniel stood there, clean-shaven, wearing a simple button-down and slacks, holding a folder. No grand gestures, no flowers, just presence. "You came," she said. "I did." He offered the folder. "I've been working on this for months." She opened it. Inside, a business plan. Second Chance Consulting, ethical financial recovery for individuals rebuilding after crisis. His name was listed not as CEO but as lead mentor. The mission statement read, "Because everyone deserves a path back, not to what they lost, but to who they can become." Clara looked up, eyes searching his. "You built this." "With help," he admitted. "From the center, from former clients, even from things I learned watching you." She flipped through the pages, budgets, outreach strategies, partnerships with shelters and legal aid groups. It was thorough, humble, real. "And you want what?" "My investment." "No," he said quickly. "I don't want your money. I want your honesty. If this is naive, tell me. If it's self-serving, tell me. But if it's genuine, I'd be honored if you'd consider being an advisor. Not as my wife, not as my savior, just as Clara Delaney. The woman who taught me that integrity isn't a strategy. It's a choice." She closed the folder slowly, heart pounding not with old wounds, but with something new, respect. "You've changed," she said softly. "I'm changing," he corrected. "Every day. Some days I slip. Some days I still feel like that arrogant man who threw everything away. But now, I catch myself, and I choose differently." She studied him, the quiet strength in his eyes, the absence of performance, the way he stood not to impress, but to be seen. "All right," she said, "I'll review it, and if it meets Aurora's ethical standards, we'll talk partnership." Relief flooded his face, but not triumph, just gratitude. "Thank you," he said. "That's more than I hoped for." He turned to leave, but paused. "Clara, do you ever think about us? The life we could have had?" She looked out at the ocean, where the last light shimmered like a promise. "I think about the life we did have, the good and the broken, and I've made peace with both." He nodded. "I just wanted you to know I'll never stop being sorry, or grateful." She met his gaze. "Then live like it." He smiled small, true. "I will." As he walked away, Clara didn't watch him go with longing. She watched with quiet certainty, because the man who once demanded the world now built bridges for others to cross. And that, she knew, was the only kind of love worth remembering. Later that night, she sat at her desk, opened his proposal again, and wrote in the margin, "Approved, with one condition: lead with humility, always." Then she sealed it in an envelope, addressed simply, Daniel. Not Mr. Moreau, not her ex, just Daniel, the man who'd finally learned how to stand on his own 2 feet in the truth, in the light. And somewhere in the city, he'd open it not as a victory, but as a vow. Because redemption wasn't a destination. It was a daily,